It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs, have some fun.
Welcome to our final edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live from the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. John Schmoke, Paul Dottino back for one more round. A big day today. We had the quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receiver, the glamour positions up at the podium. So I tried to find the most glamorous guy I could find to be the first guy up here.
You still looking?
Yes. Yeah. We're joined by Fran Duffy. He used to work for the Eagles, and now since he's with All City Networks, we can actually have him on our programming, so we don't have the Giant fans try to break down the thing.
And that's the
kick
reason
him
you
out
made
of
the
here.
move. That's right. Yeah, exactly. Just so I can come on this show today,
That's
Friday
it.
at the Combine.
Correct. 100%. Fran, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's one of my favorite weeks of the year. It's a long week, but it's a very productive week every single time I come out to Indy.
So tell the folks where they can find all your draft coverage, because while you do some Eagle stuff, it's primarily draft, and that's a national project.
Yeah, so you can check out everything. Look, for All City Network, we are present in 5 different markets around the country. So your NFL teams, you got Dallas, Philly, so a couple of the Giants fans are familiar with, but also Chicago, Phoenix, and Denver as well. And look, you can go on our draft guide right now. It's not just for those markets. It caters to all 32 teams. So you can basically find whichever market is offering the best deal right now. It's subscription based. I'm partial to our ones at PHLY, so you can go over to PHLY, you hit subscribe, and you can check out. I've got scouting reports on 200 players at this point. It's going to get up north of 250, close to 300 by the time we get to draft weekend. So, yeah, a lot of fun.
Perfect guy to talk to. So I'm going to leave it completely open-ended. Who impressed you at the podium today? Listen to these guys talk.
I mean, anytime it's a good question. It's funny because it was a perfect visual today. So Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders and Jalen Milroe all speaking at the same time. So it's just a giant mass of humanity around 3 podiums.
It was.
I use when that happens, everyone's zigging, I'm zagging. So I'm like, oh, no one's talking to the Memphis quarterback right now. I'll go talk to Seth Hennigan for 5 minutes, and just kind of bounce around. But in terms of who stood out most, I mean, Dylan Gabriel's really impressive, and that wasn't a shock at all. Based off everything that I've heard about him, didn't get a chance to speak with him down at the Senior Bowl, but he's a player that just obviously look, he's been around college football for a long time. Started as a true freshman down at UCF, and everything you heard about him was just the adult in the room at a very young age.
I'm going to go to the receivers for just a second, because I talked to one of our guests earlier this week, and we had a bunch of receivers here today. There were more boundary receivers and more boundary corners in this draft than there have been in recent years, where we saw more slot receivers and more slot corners.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is, but that's what I'm seeing. I'm sure you agree.
Yeah, it's honestly, Paul, it's a weird class this year, just overall, right? I think when you're looking at the overall talent, like at the very top of the draft, which Giants fans are not thrilled to hear this, but at the very top of the draft, the talent's not outstanding in my opinion, and then it levels off once you get into the teams where that's like a typical year. Where I have found myself looking at this class is that the guys at the very top, if I'm comparing Will Campbell to other tackles that have gone that high, if I'm comparing Mason Graham to other defensive tackles that have gone that high, and you go down the list, and it's just there are certain positions where it's very deep and you get a lot of talent, and then others where corner. You mentioned the cornerback spot. The outside corners, I agree. There's probably more boundary guys this year than the true nickels, and that's why a guy like Jahdae Barron is getting fluffed up a little bit, just because the supply and demand's not there for those inside players. But there's a lot of questions about somebody. Will Johnson, what is he going to run today? Later on this afternoon, the corner from Michigan, Siobhan Revel from ECU, talented player, round 1 tape, coming off a torn ACL, only 1 real year of experience at the FBS level. So a lot of questions about these boundary corners, but I agree there's more of them than there are those true nickel guys.
And John knows I love the tall, lengthy wide receivers, and there's a bunch of them here, and I can't tell you how much I love Jaden Higgins. He knows that.
Yeah, Jaden Higgins, a really productive player, so it's a what I love about coming here every year is that you go down, you watch the workouts, and when you have those clusters of players, this workout, you just see them back to back to back. It can help separate guys in terms of just the way they move. Obviously, look, there's a difference between the athleticism and what they put on film, and that's what matters most. But from a movement standpoint, it could serve to be a nice tiebreaker here, what they do on the field.
I don't think we've talked about Ted McMillan yet, Paul,
No,
in our
we have
time
not.
this week. So why don't we talk about him?
Sure.
He was, for some reason, they cut his podium time short. Only like 5
I
minutes
noticed
today.
that.
I don't
Yeah.
know
Sure,
why.
yeah.
And he was great. He was a very personable guy. Big. He was a little bit thicker than I thought he would be than what I saw on tape, too. He wasn't, like, rail thin.
Yep.
Really good size. I think he's a good route runner. He attacks the ball, contested catch guy.
Yeah.
How would you compare him? I wouldn't put him in the Neighbors and Harrison class.
Yep.
How close did you have him to, like, Dunze last year, Brian Thomas? Like, where would you slot him in? How high do you think he's going to go?
Yeah, he's definitely, to me, he's probably closer to a Dunze from a, line him up outside the numbers, big possession type, automatic at the catch point. His hands are outstanding. That's something that stood out from Jump Street watching him last summer, his play strength. And that's something I really value at wide receiver is that ability to play through contact from snap to whistle. And that's something that really stands out watching Tetairoa McMillan. He's not going to be this dynamic, like, yards after catch guy, but he is a load to bring down in the open field. And I think when you look at him, some guys that I've compared him to, I've seen comparisons to Mike Evans. I don't think he's as dynamic as Evans was coming out of Texas A&M.
Evans could run by you.
Yes. T-Mac's got solid speed. He's not going to run here, but he's got solid speed, but he's not that level of, like, kind of speed over the top. I like him a little more than I like Drake London. I was a little lower on Drake London than consensus. London's been a solid player. I actually have him written down compared to Cortland Sutton, and Sutton has been he's a solid number one receiver, and I kind of think that's what T-Mac ends up being. Which to me, if he goes in the top 20, I think that's fine value for that level. You don't need to be Malik Neighbors to go that high in the draft. I don't think that T-Mac is on that level, but I do think he's a solid number one.
I got a sleeper receiver for you that I did not necessarily think a whole lot of, and then I got here. Quan Felton out of Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Had met with the Giants. I talked to him about it. He had a very deep meeting with the Giants.
Yep.
He's obviously a third-day pick.
Yeah.
But I got a real good vibe out of him.
Yeah.
And I really didn't think coming in that he was going to be a guy to excite me.
Yeah, I watched him in the fall. They've got two receivers there at Virginia Tech, and so watched both of them at the same time, and they're both very different. You have Jalen Lane, who's a little bit smaller. He's more of your shifty guy, yards after catch. You line him up inside and outside, whereas you have Felton. He also will line up inside as well, but he's your bigger, stockier, really strong, excellent blocker at the point of attack. Yeah, he's
built.
He's so good in the run game, and so to me, like the teams that are going to value that, if I think of like the Sean McVay tree, like the Kyle Shanahan tree teams that are going to ask those guys to be active at the point of attack, he's going to bring a lot of value there. The athleticism is a question now that he can prove that wrong here this week, and that's the value here of coming to the combine and working out. But Felton is a player I really like, but I think he's going to be a specific kind of role player, in my guess, moving into the NFL.
Now, you're always going to find wide receivers on day 2 and day 3 that turn out to be better than where they're drafted.
Yeah.
For you, who are those guys this year that you're kind of a big fan of, maybe higher on than consensus, that are going to be day 2 or day 3 picks?
Honestly, the Jalen Noel, the receiver from Virginia Tech, the other kid, he reminds me
Iowa State.
Yeah, oh, yes. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. So there's two Jalen receivers that spell it the exact. There's Jalen Noel and there's Jalen Lane.
And then you also have Jaden Higgins, who's from Iowa State. I get it.
Just keeps on going and going. So, and like, by the way, like working with the Eagles, they've had 19 Jalens over the last 10 years. Look, when I look at Lane, he's a player that has the ability to win inside and outside. He can be used underneath. And previous stops, he's been excellent over the top, down the field as well.
He's a fast slot, man. He's got deep speed.
Yeah, so he was a player that I looked at and say, you know what, for the right team, if he got the opportunity, he could outperform that draft slot.
We had running backs out there earlier. In fact, they were the last segment of the groups before we came in here. What disturbed me a little bit is that even the guys who were supposed to be the bruisers and the bangers, most of them were a little smaller than I thought they were going to be.
Yep.
Did that also kind of ring to your eyes as well? I shouldn't say your sights as well.
I'm interested to see what the measurements come in at, because it's always interesting to see the guys that come in smaller. Because a lot of people will cut weight going into the combine.
I wonder if that was on purpose, because they're looking for that speed time, so they took some bulk off.
Oftentimes you will see that. I mean, look, I was in the bowl last night for the defensive line workouts, and Shamar Stewart, the pass rusher from Texas A&M, he came in at the Senior Bowl at 281. Like, what was it, 3 weeks ago? Feels like 8 months ago. ago at this point, but it was
14
like
pounds lighter.
Yeah, he was at 260. Princely Umanmielen, the pass rusher from Ole Miss, he was 260 at the Senior Bowl. He was at 244 yesterday.
I missed that. Was he 244?
244.
Wow.
And so you see guys that are going to drop that weight severely. Mason Graham came in under 300. He was listed like 318 by Michigan. And so you're going to see a lot of these guys that are going to try and cut weight to get ready for the combine. I want to see what the official measurements are. I haven't gone through it and seen what I know that those guys are getting ready to work out tomorrow, so we'll see tomorrow morning what those measurements are for these guys. But that's not a surprising trend whatsoever.
If you're looking for I'll ask Paul's question for him. Actually, I'll let you ask the banger question. If you want to supplement Tyrone Tracy with a guy that maybe is a little bit more explosive, pass receiver, top-end speed, game breaker, who are some of the guys that you like in this class on day 2 or 3?
How early do you want to spend a pick on one?
Round 4 or 5.
Okay. Because that's going to change my answer. All right. Cam Scadaboo is the one that comes to mind first. And I think with Scadaboo, what's interesting is that
as a banger you're talking about.
As a banger, yeah.
And he's one of those guys who was a little more svelte than I thought he was going to be.
Yeah. That's the thing is that everyone watched Cam Scadaboo this fall, and he was awesome for Arizona State. Focal point of the offense. They ran through him, and he can do a little bit of everything. He catches the ball extremely well. He's not a dynamic athlete, but everybody looks at him and is like, oh, big, powerful, like this big white running back. He looks like Brian Leonard. He looks like Peyton Hillis.
I've heard
James
the Brian
Conner.
Leonard comp. Yeah.
Throw him out because those guys were 225, 230. Peyton Hillis was a big, 235-pound back.
We had Peyton Hillis. He's a huge human being.
That is not the way that Scadaboo was built. Scadaboo he is much more modest size. 5'10", I think 205, something like that. I mean, you're talking 25-pound difference. That's huge at running back. And so now that said, Scadaboo is really strong. He is completely maxed out in terms of and he runs really, really hard. I do think he presents that downhill element to an NFL offense, but he's not going to be that. And that's why. Look, he was a 0-star recruit. A lot of times when you see those guys that transfer up, you can look and say, like, all right, why were they under-recruited? Sometimes it's academics, but sometimes, like, they just didn't have, like, that natural God-given talent. I think Scadaboo is one of those guys. It's great that he's getting every ounce of ability out of his body, but that's the discussion point with him.
All right, so I'm curious. You said, well, what round? Well, what if I told you second or third round? What would have been your answer?
Marion Hampton,
yes.
North Carolina.
Now that guy lived up to his bulk reputation.
Yeah,
that's a guy
he's a well put together human being.
Yeah, but honestly, like I don't know that he's even going to be there for the Giants in the second round. I think he might end up going in the first round when it's all said and done. Yeah, I mean that guy is so well built. Just talking with some of the coaches that have been around him, they talk about his toughness and his physicality. He's a silent assassin type. He's not a guy that's going to be like that rah-rah guy in the locker room, but he is just so physical. I love him downhill. He's really patient in the hole.
The 4 threes.
I'm fascinated to see what he runs at that size. If he were to do that, then we're like saying, yeah, he is definitely going to go that high. My guess is he won't hit that, but man, like if he were to do that, that would be really.
You think
impressive.
about 4.45?
That would be my guess. Like the low 4.4s into the 4.5s. So that's my expectation. And that to me, when we talk about the combine, it's all about expectations. When everyone talks about
100%.
James Pierce Jr. Everyone went nuts for the way that he worked out yesterday. The pass rusher from Tennessee.
That's what he looked like on tape.
If he didn't do that, then that's a surprise for me. But then you look at, to me, like Ty Robinson from Nebraska. I didn't see that athleticism on film with him, and I was getting guff from my Nebraska people about that. And they were like, "Oh, he's gonna go second round. He's this athlete." I was like, I don't know if I quite see those movement skills. They said, wait till he tests. He went to the Senior Bowl, and I didn't think he was great down there.
No, I don't think he was either.
I'm texting, they're asking, "How's he look?" And I'm like, "Oh, like he looks okay."
He didn't win in the one-on-ones until like day 3.
Day 3, no question. And so then here he runs the 40, and my phone, I'm getting like 2 or 3 texts from people. They're like, "Oh, I told you," and I was like, and I text him back, asked the workout's going. I'm like, he had a really good workout. Like the testing was really good, but even the position stuff, which I put a lot of weight in that. Yeah. Can you carry the athletic testing over to the field work? And I thought Robinson was one of the better ones.
And I thought Landon Jackson did too.
Yeah, he
was
awesome.
Who he did not pop at the Senior Bowl either. He had some good reps again. I think he was a later in the week type of guy. He did better in the game. He's a bigger guy. I didn't think he was going to have that type of explosive ability in him, to be honest with you.
I'm really high on his film, but I agree.
He's a good player. I'm with you.
And I went to the Senior Bowl, and I thought he was just okay. Especially as the week went on, he got a little bit better. I forget the numbers off the top of my head. He came in at 264 here this week.
He jumped 40 inches. I know
Jumped out of the gym. So 40 inches in the vert, and then the broad was something crazy too. The list of guys who have jumped as far in those two at that weight. There's 2 other players drafted in the last 10 years at edge rush who have done it.
Miles Garrett.
One of them is Miles Garrett.
JPP?
No, the other was
Shamar Stewart
Bud
did it
Dupree.
too.
Yeah,
Bud Dupree.
And Shamar Stewart did it too. So you're talking about just in terms of that size and that level of explosiveness, that's what Landon Jackson can bring. And again, he carried that over to the field work, which to me carries a lot of weight.
All right, so we're like midway through the field events. We still have some more to go.
Yeah,
Midway. It's quarter
of the way.
That's right. You're going to be here 3 more days, you poor guy.
3 more 8-hour
I feel really
sessions
sorry, really bad for you. To this point, who has impacted themselves the most in a positive way and in a negative way at this point in the combine?
Yeah, I think that, the big thing is that, because I was just talking about this on another show, a lot of the guys that I think would have impacted negatively just said they pulled the Seinfeld and were like, I choose not to run. Yeah.
They pull the old ripcord.
Yeah, they're saying, I'm out.
Kenneth Grant, everybody?
Yeah, there were some guys who just said, I'm going to wait till pro day. I'm not going to do it. And so, overall, there weren't a lot of players that tested yesterday or that went through stuff. And I was like, man, that was not what I expected in a negative context. It was more along the lines of like the Ty Robinsons, where it's like, wow, that guy moved a lot better than I thought he would. People did have questions about Landon Jackson. I think he might have put that to rest, so I feel good about him in the top 35 at this point, the top 30. So I think when you look at those guys, those would be the players that I think helped themselves the most.
All right, final question. This is when we start hearing things at night when we're out and about from teams about how meetings are going and stuff like that. Yep. Anything you're hearing that you can share about maybe how some of these guys are meeting, anything that you've kind of heard through the rumblings and the grapevine at the Combine, which is really like half the reason most of these people behind us are even here.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about taking in the workouts as well is that obviously most scouts and coaches are over there, so you get to run into people. So I'll start, honestly, having a lot of those discussions in the next 3 days just because it started for me yesterday there. It's a good way for me to avoid having to go out until 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning,
That's
too.
Smart man.
I'm trying to see if I can double dip there a little bit. I'm trying to think. I mean, look, anyone that talks with Travis Hunter just comes away super impressed with it. And look, and that's the thing that we know about what he does on the field, but to do everything that he's done on the field, just a unicorn profile, 4.0 student, like.
Thank you for not using generational, by the way.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that
word.
I would not call him a generational corner. I would not call him a generational receiver, but he is a generational profile. Like we don't see guys that have that two-way ability
Truly
the way
unique.
that he does. I actually did something I've never done before.
3-way. He's a return guy.
I know that's
way.
crazy. But I wrote him up in two separate positions, and just he's in my rankings as wide receiver Travis Hunter and
two different pages.
2 different pages.
Very nice.
It was too much because we saw like Adoree Jackson. Adoree Jackson came out.
Actually,
and
he
did a little
cloned
bit of both.
himself. It's really 2 different guys.
Honestly, that's what it feels like when you watch it because there's no way this guy can do this both ways. But to do all that and then to again 4.0 student and just everyone you talk to when they meet with him, it's like that guy. It's just, he's aces.
Out of curiosity, I know corner 1, I would assume, right, for you?
And receiver 1.
Is he receiver 1?
Both.
That's what I was curious about.
You know what's interesting at the podium, and he handled the podium very well, too.
Yeah.
He said the reason that he believes he's going to keep playing both in the NFL is because he said in the NFL there's going to be more breaks and stoppages than there is in the college game, so I'm going to get a chance. That's what he claimed.
Those college games take forever. They have replays every 3 plays.
I thought so as well, but his claim was there's going to, in terms of him playing and being on the field, he said there's going to be more breaks and stoppages. I'll be able to catch my breath, and there's no reason why I can't keep doing it.
Yeah, I think that I'm glad that he's listed as a corner here. Because look, the way that you guys are in the building, you guys know this. If you're, and I feel this way about Jalen Walker, any positionless player that comes out, it's like he could do all of these things. He's got to do something. He's got to major in something because he's got to go when he shows up on Tuesday.
What meeting room is
he going into?
That's right.
Who's he spending the most time with? And I've talked with some of the Colorado players, down at Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl, and it was. Well, he would go into one meeting. He'd start the week with the receivers, and then the DB coach would come in and be like, "Oh, he's got to come over here." And then there would be other ways where it was vice versa, right? It's not going to work that way in the NFL.
Not at all.
And
not at all.
No, and if he's going to be a receiver primarily, they're not going to create a special package defensively.
It's hard to have a cornerback.
No, you can't do that. Yeah. So to me, he's a full-time corner,
right?
And then we're going to make 15 plays a week for him
to
be a receiver.
We are very aligned on this.
Which also then, and that's the thing is that while I grade him as wide receiver 1, the way I did that grade, I was like, all right, how am I going to handle this? Because knowing that he could play both ways. He wouldn't be wide receiver 1 if he's only going to be a package player, right? Like I'm not. If that's not the way. If he were to just be a receiver, he would be wide receiver 1. So that's the only way I would decide to look at it.
Fran, this was fun, man. Good seeing you, brother.
Great,
Good to see you, man.
Fran Duffy, All City Networks. Check it
you.
out. We'll be back with more. We have Field Yates coming your way, Rhett Lewis coming your way, and Ryan Fowler coming your way. We'll be right back with more.
We got some cilantro, some onions, some carrots.
Giving back to the community means a lot. Just to keep giving hope that, you know, you just live in a situation, the situation doesn't define you.
So, I got you.
Thank y'all.
You're welcome.
Seriously. This is so nice of y'all.
Well, thank you.
Just little things like that just to keep encouraging guys.
All right, now we're back here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. We welcome in Field Yates from ESPN. Field, good to talk to you, man. How are you?
It's great to be back on. I'm doing great. How about you guys?
We're doing great, and we'll have Field on for a longer conversation on a huddle later on in the process here. But, Field, let's talk about what's going on this week. And first, I want to talk about a show you did with Mel Kiper last week. Because Paul and I did almost an identical show a day apart, which is amazing. And Mel came with all the numbers and the stats. He went back. I was lazy. I only went back to 2000. Mel went back to 1973.
Yeah, so Mel's been doing the draft since 73, pretty much at least.
Correct. So we both found, and we used different types of data. He used just playoff appearances. I used divisional playoff appearances because I wanted to take out the, like, TJ Yateses of the world.
Wow, my cousin.
I'm
not
sorry.
literally, but.
No offense, man. But
future head coach.
It really did look like if you want a quarterback, you got to pick one early.
Yeah, and that's the nature of it, truthfully, is that, and this is going to sound like, the NFL draft is this fascinating exercise in so many ways, but one of which is this. We use how sort of the public, and I said how the media is describing players as a very important data point, right? And where it matters is that if you follow mock drafts from various reputable sources and you start to see that a player is being mocked in the first round, it suggests to you, if you're an NFL team, that, hey, this person or these people must be hearing from people around the NFL. This is about where they anticipate this player is going. And so it comes down to this. Do you want to get cute and try to see if you can wait it out until round 2, and maybe you get your guy, or if you have enough conviction on that player, do you just take him in the first round? Mock drafts be damned. The reality with quarterbacks, in my opinion, is this. If you're not confident enough in the guy being a starting quarterback, you shouldn't be sniffing him early in the draft in general.
Right.
There should be a very clear standard by which you are evaluating these players and determining, is this somebody that can credibly start games for us and take us to a divisional round playoff game, or is this somebody that, if we need him for a pocket of games, he's fine, but truthfully, if he is our long-term starter, we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. And I want to follow up on that real quick, Paul. And I do wonder, Field, as these teams look at this, and this is hard to evaluate with any sort of shorty before they play an NFL game, and we've all been wrong about guys before.
But we'll be many times over in the future, too.
100%.
Yep.
If you think a guy's going to be the 17th best quarterback in the National Football League, is that worth it? Because you're going to be sitting here in 5 years, and it's either pay the guy $50 million or let him walk, to have a guy that will get you to 500, will get you maybe a playoff win against the right opponent, but they're not going to get you where you need to go. It gets very, very hard.
That, to me, is where I think the team context comes into play, right? It's what are your options otherwise, right? On top of that, it's what's like, where are you in your franchise trajectory, right? Yeah. And this is where I believe, and we're in a very unique space now in the NFL, where patience has run thinner than ever, right? And one bad season, all of a sudden, everybody needs to go in the eyes of the public. I am not a big believer, traditionally, in ownership meddling within football decisions. But where I do think owners can take on a larger charge is this, is if you believe, like if you are empowering a head coach and a GM to make important decisions, I also think that you should be empowering them to make important decisions that best set you up for sustained success. Yeah. And that might be, by the way, that this upcoming year isn't great. But maybe in time, because not everybody has a situation like the Commanders where they draft a quarterback second overall and they're playing the NFC Championship game, right? Like, that should be very much viewed as a rarity, not an expectation. So to me, I'd be much more inclined to feel fine about a quarterback as long as I believe in time. He can get us to a point where we are consistently winning games and competing in the playoffs. You know, when you say like 16th, 17th, like suggesting league average, I probably would not want to be making that investment in a quarterback in the first round. But if my options were so limited and I felt like I had to do it or else, hey, I don't have a choice, then I get why teams do that. It's very much inherent and incumbent upon the coach and the GM to be mindful of where they are in the franchise trajectory.
I want to ask you about the evaluation of the top 2 QBs in this draft field, because it's my perception that over the course of from the end of the season till about 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
it seemed like everywhere I went, it was 50-50.
Yeah.
Sanders, Ward, Sanders, Ward, Ward, Sanders, whatever.
Yep.
In the last 2 weeks,
Yeah.
it seems as though almost everybody's telling me Ward is clearly the better quarterback, has a better skill set, better traits. John and I have always felt that way between the two of them.
Yeah.
I don't happen to think either one of them is a top 10.
Yeah, and I have landed on the Cam Ward side myself. And so here's what I'd say is, and sometimes fans get mad at this. They sort of suggest, like, does the media have any idea what it's talking about when they have these fall estimates of where the players are, where they fit, etc. Is we are in some ways reliant upon what the league knows, hears, sees, and perhaps reveals, because there are pieces of the puzzle that we just don't have at our disposal, right? Like, I'm not going to sit down with any prospect behind closed doors this weekend and ask that prospect things that a GM or a head coach is going to. Right?
Which for quarterbacks is critical.
I mean, we saw this last year on Hard Knocks during the offseason version with the Giants, right? Like, they weren't sitting there asking, all right, Drake, so, like, what's your favorite place to visit when you go back home to North Carolina, right? Like, it might start there, but it's, let's draw this play up on the board, all right? If you get this coverage, what is your adjustment here, right? Let's talk about protection. That stuff, that, like, I just am not going to have a chance to talk to Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. So there are ways in which we're relying upon the NFL for its feedback to kind of influence how we anticipate the draft going. If it was simply my decision, and it's not, I would have a stronger belief in Cam Ward as my potential franchise quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. That being said, Shedeur's got a lot of darn good tape on his resume. 4 seasons playing college football, which even if the first 2 were not at the FBS level, the guy's got a lot of experience. He's got tremendous toughness. He's, to me, the best pocket passer in the entire NFL draft. The quandary for taking a quarterback high is rarely are teams drafting a quarterback high the same teams that have a good offensive line. And Shedeur, who played behind a shaky offensive line in Colorado last year, led the FBS in sacks taken. That's an offensive line stat, to be clear. The quarterback influences it as well.
It's also a quarterback stat.
I believe that. So I just, if I am making that investment in him, I want to make sure that my 5 layers of protection up front are outstanding as well.
All right, now there's a chance the Giants might acquire a veteran quarterback, whether it's via trade or free agency. You can touch on that if you want, whether I think that's a good idea. But I still think even if they go that way, even if, especially if it's an older quarterback on the north side of 35, you probably want to bring in a quarterback anyway, right?
You do, yeah.
So any of these guys that could, you talk about maybe Jackson Dart sneaking into the back end of round 1, a round 2, round 3 developmental guy, if they end up with a veteran that you think would be advantageous to them in this year's draft.
Well, I do think I'll say the name. I understand why it might be tricky to do so. But, like, if Matthew Stafford becomes a New York Giant,
you know how the game is played, Field. I appreciate that.
I'll give you the quarterback that I would like to see them pair with Matthew Stafford, and that's Tyler Shuck from Louisville. He'll be 26 on September 28th of this upcoming fall. So he's an older prospect. He played 7 years in college, began his career at Oregon, then Texas Tech, and then finished up at Louisville. Had a great season this past year. Highly, highly recruited player coming out of high school. Couple of injuries, but not injuries that my understanding is that they're not going to impact him long term. It is just the kind of stuff that can derail your college career a little bit. We've seen guys have wandering paths in college and become better pro prospects. I don't think anybody in this draft as Matthew Stafford is apex, right? The guy is, in my opinion, a future Hall of Famer. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been an outstanding player for a long time. Shuck has the most traits that resemble Matthew Stafford to me. So the idea that you could, and it's not just the fact that he wears number 9, big stature guy, right? But, like, he's got this unique ability to throw from a bunch of different arm angles. Good athlete, not superlative athlete, but good enough athlete to throw on the run. Extremely mature as well. Like, I think he's going to be a guy that has a great week here talking to teams. In a vacuum, though, in a total vacuum, and this is not how it operates, I will always be an advocate for a team that is coming off of a season in which they have the 3rd pick in the draft, right? Not a lot of wins last year. I would rather try to find the player that gives me the best chance over the next 5 to 7 years to win a lot of games consistently, as opposed to the guy who might help resurrect things for next year, the year after. But I don't think, just based off of age trajectory, that Matthew Stafford, for example, is a 5-year plan for the Giants. And if you bring him aboard, is this roster ready to win with Matthew Stafford right now? My own evaluation is that it's not quite ready to make a playoff push, and I would be more motivated to draft a young quarterback.
All right. the trenches got a lot of play because of what the Eagles have done.
Yeah.
And obviously the running backs also got a lot of play this year because of all the guys who switched teams and had productive seasons and led their teams into the playoffs. Is this something now that in this copycat league we're going to see these teams make a big rush? Because we know the running back core is deep, and we know the defensive line is deep.
Yeah, the former more so than the latter for me. And I think two things can be true at once. You can acknowledge the brilliance of some of the running backs that changed teams this offseason that contributed to a ton of winning. Saquon and Henry and Josh Jacobs. I also think it's fair to acknowledge that the three teams that they were with the year prior all were not particularly successful. So I view an outstanding running back as, if you're looking at a championship recipe, the icing on the cake as opposed to the foundation of it all, right? That's my opinion of how the running back impacts winning for a team that's going to win at the highest level. So
you get served the meal, then the guy comes over with the pepper, and then he does the pepper on top.
Yeah, I never can say stop. I just want all the pepper anyways myself.
Just the cheese on the pasta. Can I go there, please?
Cheese on the pasta. That works too.
Thank you.
I can also win in that regard as well. So I believe this year, there's such tremendous depth at this running back class. I remember Mel Kiper, the great Mel Kiper, threw out the number around 35 early in the draft process in terms of draftable running backs this year. I'm north of 30 already myself. Wow. So I haven't gotten to the final number. There's still more guys to look at. But you have to measure, all right, I can take this player early. And I believe Ashton Genty from Boise State fits into a category of his own.
Right.
I don't know that as of right now, this moment in the combine, I can sit here and tell you that I would definitively use a top 25 pick on any other back in this class because for as talented as a guy like Omarion Hampton from North Carolina or Caleb Johnson from Iowa or Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State or anybody that you might like, let me just tell you, you got some guys that are going to be sitting there on day 3 that excite the heck out of me. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, a kid who played one game at Arizona this past year, Alabama State to New Mexico to Arizona. This guy's got some juice. He's got some talent. LaQuint Allen, a Syracuse kid. Maybe late day 2, but maybe he sneaks into day 3. Led all FBS running backs in terms of receptions this past season. There's juice all over the running back map. So I'm loading up on the big guys early, and I'll let the running back board fall to me a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, you have the kid out of UCF. He's just an explosive guy. The Oregon back that could be
RJ
around
Harvey,
3 or 4.
Jamar James.
Yeah, I mean, my God, you got the good players, and they go up and down the board. I'm with you. Paul and I we've gotten the same answer from most people. What do you think of the DB class this year? The Giants need help in the defensive backfield, and usually when we ask about it, the first person who gives a face first, he goes, and then they give their answer, and I got the sense that was the face you were about to give to.
That was, yeah. So I'm having a hard time finding the depth in this class at either at the cornerback spot specifically. So I do feel confident. I don't want to decide for Travis Hunter what he's going to be, but if you're calling him just a cornerback, I think the kid's a stud. I think he's both, but he's a great cornerback prospect. I'm still of the belief that Will Johnson has every bit the skill set to be a deserving top 10 pick from Michigan. Big question for Will, who won't work out this week at the Combine, is the top end speed.
I wonder if he's ever going to run.
I don't think, it's my colleague Jordan Reed reported he's going to work out at his pro day. Whether he runs remains to be seen. How much upside is there? I'll say it. I don't see the speed deficiency on tape. I don't. Do I think this guy is Deion Sanders in his prime as far as speed goes? No. Do I think he's going to be a problem back there? I also don't see that. A couple of occasions this year, an abbreviated season where he looked really good. Ball skills are tremendous. Instincts are very, very good. He is a hawk. I think beyond that, the question becomes, are there 3 other, how many other DBs go in the first, 40 or so picks? Because I believe once you get past, pick 12, 13, 14, where you categorize these players becomes a little bit more subjective, right? The difference between 20 and 40 is a lot different than 1 and 20. Azareye'h Thomas from Florida State's got great size, 6'1.5", had a great season last year for a team that was out of basically every game. I'm a huge Max Hairston guy from Kentucky. When he runs, I think he's going to fly. Some people are still big believers in Ben Morrison from Notre Dame. I like the kid a lot.
Yeah, so do I.
He's got a serious hip injury that
I know.
Haven't seen him for a while.
And his second hip injury, by the way. He had one in high school, too.
And with the difference between that and Will Johnson is, Will not going to participate this week. The intel has consistently been not going to be a long-term thing that you're concerned about. Matt, with Ben, I haven't quite got the same understanding as what it is. So, anyways, not a super deep cornerback class. The safety class has a little bit of depth, a little more depth than the cornerback class, in my estimation, and some guys that I think do have a chance to go in the first round.
Phil, awesome stuff, my man. First
Thanks for
draft
having me on.
podcast.
Great.
Anything else on ESPN?
Thank
You have coming out mock drafts, top hundreds, anything? What
I
do you
got to
got?
look at my schedule. There's probably a mock coming out soon. We love mocks. Yeah.
Phil, that's Phil Yates from ESPN. We'll be back with more Big Blue Kickoff Live presented by Cadillac.
It's a thread.
A love affair. I fell in love with the Giants. I saw LT run the touchdown battle when they played the Detroit Lions.
Pass down. Phil Simms was my dad's guy.
From generation.
Eli was my guy. To generation.
Giant Special.
We are
The New York Giants.
All right, we're back here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants, at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Paul Dottino, John Schmelk, joined by Rhett Lewis, who's part of the coverage of the Combine for NFL Network all week long. Rhett, how is your week treating you, my friend?
Man, it's awesome. I do love this event, man. There's so many different places to get value at this event. Like, even, for the teams, obviously, they, get to know these prospects, get to see them, get to learn more about, where they've come from. And that's kind of, our role, too, as we try to bring their stories to life. We're all learning, right? And then obviously we're bumping elbows with some folks that we haven't seen in a while. And so I love all that part of it, and love getting to sit here and talk to you guys about the Giants, and I reminisce about my good buddies Sean O'Hara, obviously, and Eli. Now up here with media superstars with the show. Like you guys, I feel like I probably give you guys more clicks than anybody. So
we appreciate that.
Yeah,
we need him for sure.
No, it's awesome, man. So I appreciate you guys having me.
By the way, you can tell he's a pro. The mic etiquette with the podcast mic is probably the best that we've had all week.
Hey, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Pearson, I got you, brother. Yeah.
Oh, what do you got?
I want to ask you an off-draft question.
Sure.
We're at the Combine. That's what everybody wants to talk about. But an off-draft question, a storyline that's kind of opened up in the last 24 to 36 hours is about the tush push with those Philadelphia Eagles, and how there are some teams that are like, well, we got to get rid of that play.
Right.
What are you hearing about it? What do you think the push is to get the push out of the game?
Well, here's what I like. I like people. I like teams. I like organizations that do things really well. The Philadelphia Eagles do that play better than anybody.
Yes.
Anybody can get out there and try to replicate it, but nobody really
And by the way, just look at the AFC Divisional Playoffs. They tried that play with Josh Allen three times, who, by the way, is 240 pounds, and they couldn't do it against the Chiefs.
Correct. So, I love watching people do things that they're really good at. And, it's like that team is really flipping good at it. You know what I would love to see? Somebody stop it on a consistent basis. You know what I mean? And not in the rule book.
Everyone's like, Jason Kelsey's gone. They're going to stop him now. And then
beef jerky's all right. Yeah. So it's difficult to come up. Nobody's come up with a real plan to stop it. So I understand that maybe we got to resort to other means to try and stop it.
Now, is part of the issue what happened in the playoff game, where you had a player now launching himself as a missile?
Yeah.
Because, we think that's the best way to stop it. Now you're kind of creating a potentially dangerous situation.
There's that, for sure. And I think the safety of the game, and look, it looks like it hurts. On a lot of different fronts.
It's a lot of big people hitting each other very hard.
Daniel Bellinger from the Giants got hurt 2 years ago in that very play when the Giants tried it.
So did Schmitz.
John Michael Schmitz. Yeah. So I think it takes special personnel to do it. I wouldn't want to be a part of it, just speaking quite frankly here. But I like watching it, and I think if something does get amended, some kind of control does come down, it will be on a player safety front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do you think the quarterback market is going to look like over the next 14 days? And I'll include free agency and trades in that conversation.
Yeah, and I think the three names we're talking about are, Matthew Stafford, maybe four. Matthew Stafford, Sam Darnold, Aaron Rodgers, and Kirk Cousins if that does become available.
How about Russell Wilson and Justin Fields too, right?
Yeah, that too.
Lower level,
but
yes.
Right? But I think certainly they're in that market there, and we'll see what ends up happening. With where they go and how much money they command based off what we saw for them this year. It's such a discounted rate, at least to the Steelers. But I think I keep coming back with Stafford, and I could certainly see the allure. For the Giants trying to make a play there. He's a Super Bowl champion quarterback. He's an elite talent. He's one of the top players at his position. But man, I know the Rams have given him the opportunity to gauge his value, and I understand that too. But that team was a play away from the NFC title game, and title game that if they get there, I think they're winning it. And we're talking about a Super Bowl opportunity here for the Rams. Why would you want to restart that when you're on the cusp of something great like that? So I think ultimately they'll try to find the best possible scenario to bring him back. So I don't know how real all the Stafford stuff is. Obviously, with what we've heard, you understand why it's being talked about in so many different ways. I can understand why the Giants would be interested. You can understand why Tom Brady would be interested with the Raiders. You can understand why there would be other interests out there. I just find it hard to believe that the Rams would start that thing over at this point. But,
well, if they had to, where do you suspect they might turn? Would Jimmy Garoppolo get a shot? As the current backup, who also, by the way, is a free agent?
Rhett, I love the Sam Darnold fit there, man.
That would be the one that would make more sense to me. I think he's has proven to be, at their best, Sam Darnold a better player. Now, has he been at his best consistently enough? I think the Vikings would say the last couple of weeks of the season, including the playoffs, were a bit of a problem there. But maybe that's just, again, part of the development. I mean, this is the best year of his career by far, and maybe we're still seeing that sort of career arc for him. So, that's one. And, the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, I think, is a bit of a mystery. I don't really know how much interest that is really there from anyone, at this point.
You think he retires, Rhett?
I don't. I think we'd know by now if he was going to retire. I think has been given plenty of time to kind of think about that. But maybe it does come to that if the interest doesn't materialize, you know. And then Kirk Cousins is kind of fascinating too, especially after we learned, that he was maybe banged up during that rough patch, with Atlanta. So I think those four really are going to be intriguing. And then, as you mentioned, Fields and Wilson to a slightly lesser degree, those six guys will also determine, in a way, what happens on April 24th in Green Bay.
Yeah. Does Derek Carr factor into this thing at all with the Saints? There seemed to be some conflicting reports early that he might be on his way out, but then they said, well, maybe he's not.
Well, I think Kellen Moore coming in and seeing and considering where he's been, right? You think back to, Dak in Dallas, Justin Herbert in L.A., and now Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. These are guys that were established veterans. I don't know, and I know Derek carries a big cap number, but, most quarterbacks do, except that the problem is that the Saints have been trying to Band-Aid the salary cap thing for a long time, so they've got other issues there. In some of this, though, the devil you know is still better than the devil you don't.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's Kellen knows what he would, I think, in an ideal world, like to do at quarterback. I think, those are probably part of the conversations that they had when they were interviewing him and hiring him. So ultimately, I still feel like he probably ends up there this year, and then we'll see what happens. Yeah.
How do you think the general free agency process is going to play out here? It's not a great group. It's, not a bunch of superstars. We need to see more trades because
we didn't see a lot of franchise tags, right?
Right. So if teams can't find what they need in the free agent market, are they going to say, well, if another team is a high-priced player, they don't want to pay anymore, we'll send you a pick, we'll take on that contract, and we'll get our top player that way? Do you think this will be a little bit of a different deal the next month or so?
That's kind of interesting. I didn't think about it that way, but I could certainly see the trades, maybe becoming more of a thing. I feel like we've seen a ton of contract amendments, small things, like the contract language, the date that the contract voids. We've seen a lot of that stuff, a lot of those types of things come out, which I've been kind of intrigued by to see what that ultimately does for teams' abilities, to re-sign players that they really want. I look at a guy like Malcolm Kuntz from the Raiders, as a player who got banged up last year but was an ascending player. What is an injury and an absence there due to his value? I think the thing that we've seen is if you're going to go get a free agent, you're going to overpay. If you're going to get a top-tier free agent. Yeah. There's just no other way around it.
Right.
Quote-unquote overpay.
Especially at a premier position.
The guy becomes an all-pro, who cares what you paid for him, eventually. It's like the idea of overdrafting a player, it's like, well, if he becomes a starter for you for 10 years, who cares where you draft him?
And the problem is that the all pros generally don't hit the free agent mark.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
Right, and that is a great point. So, yeah, I'll be curious to see if the trades kind of fire up a little bit more frequently, than usual once that new league year kicks off.
It's interesting you talk about the machinations in the contracts, Rhett, because we're seeing more and more teams throw more and more void years on the backs of deals to keep their premier guys. And I think over the last 2 years, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I know from talking to Joe Shane, the salary cap has not just increased, but increased more than what was projected
this year,
in each of the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Which I think also lends itself to teams pushing the money down the road.
Yeah, sure. And you're kind of like, oh, we're going to push this down the road. We're going to hope the cap goes up enough to offset the way that we're pushing it down the road. And I guess going back to the question about Derek Carr and the Saints, like this benefits them a bunch,
sure,
right? Because they're going to have a better situation because of the way in which this all went up.
And the Eagles, same deal.
Yeah, same thing. But look, again, we can talk about free agents all we want, and they are a great way if you feel like you are a player or two away to fill those holes. But man, I look at what Philly did. Look at what the Bucs did when they won the Super Bowl. They were pounding the draft and winning the draft with big men on both sides of the ball. And you look at the way that Tampa rebuilt their offensive line. You look at the way that Kansas City now needs to rebuild their offensive line. But the last time they did it, went and got Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, and they found Joe Thuney in free agency, and that was great. But ultimately, the big men up front, and I think we saw that with Philly, win in this league and in this draft. That's what it's all about. So maybe that is part of why we're not going to see as much free agent activity this year, especially on that front, because this draft is loaded with players that are big physical guys on both sides of the ball.
What are the storylines and major themes that are going to emerge over the weekend here at the Combine that you're keeping an eye on?
I mean, obviously we're right now is the time where the headlines are, who's not doing anything. So, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Abdul Carter.
Oh, do we know Cam Ward's not going to throw? I did not see that. That broke today while we were recording, I guess.
What
there
a surprise.
Yeah. Not surprised by that, but okay.
No, I think all that stuff is I don't think that stuff hurts any of the players. I think doing well here has the ability to help you.
Sure.
Right? So I look at it as a positive. But I think some of the headlines we'll talk about are like, all right, a guy like Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M is 280 pounds, and Mike Test like a 255-pound defensive end. So those guys, I think, kind of dominate the headlines early, especially because they're the first group up on Thursday. I think Saturday, the quarterback 3 battle in this draft class is going to take center stage because we are going to see Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck. We'll talk about Jalen Milroe. I mean, if
Quinn
some
Ewers,
of
maybe
Quinn Ewers,
mix,
of course.
yeah.
If some of these guys end up not throwing, then fine. But that QB3 battle is one to really watch over the course of the next couple of days.
Rhett is an old-school football guy. I love the running game. And
Sure.
This is the first time in the NFL that we've seen the top 6 rushing teams all make the playoffs in the same season.
That's great, right?
And it's the turn of events now. From being video game passing football, we're starting to see a little more emphasis in the trenches and the run game, and this is a great draft for running backs.
Oh, and by the way, how many of those teams went out and got a free agent running back last year? Packers and Jacobs, obviously Eagles and Barkley, Ravens and Derrick Henry. So I don't think that happens every year, but I think we're going to see 2, even 3 running backs go in the first round this year. Talking about Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton, and Travion Henderson to me is the next guy as like a Jahmyr Gibbs home run hitter type of player. So running backs, but that's the thing. Like you're going to be able to find really good play. I love Caleb Johnson from Iowa a little bit down the road if you're running a zone scheme. Like there's a lot of really fun running backs. Cam Scatterbo I think is going to endear himself to a fan base with the way that he plays. So yeah, I think you'll find starters through day 3 at running back in this draft.
Final question. I know you haven't done all your work on the class yet.
No
give
worries.
me like 1 or 2 guys that's like the Rhett Lewis guy that you just love to watch.
Yeah, there's a number of those guys that stood out to me. Jack Besh from TCU is a Red Star player for me. I think he's a day 2 second round pick all day long. I think he was not only the MVP in the emotional manner in which it all happened at the Senior Bowl.
That was incredible.
I was on the call for the game.
I know.
And
I watched.
It's just like, the goosebumps still come up when I think about it. So, but it's not just a good story. He's a really good player.
Yeah.
He had over 1,000 yards receiving at TCU this year. He was finally healthy. He's a big, physical, contested catch machine. He will block your butt off at the point of attack. Like, he reminds me of a Rams receiver. Like, he reminds me of, like, Puka Nacua. He reminds me of a Cooper Kupp type of player.
Yeah.
But I think there's other guys out there. There's a guy down the line, if you want to talk about running backs, that's just really fun to watch. Marcus Yarns from Delaware.
Great third down back.
Yes.
Ooh, he's fun.
Yeah, right in up in that area. Like he hits like over 22 in the GPS. He was really good at the Senior Bowl. First combine invite from Delaware since Nasir Adderley in 2019. So I like some of the smaller school guys.
Good Nasir Adderley pull.
Yeah,
well done.
right. Darius Alexander from Toledo. Toledo's going to have a first-round pick in 2 straight drafts. So I mean, like, there's some fun stuff that way for sure.
Right, good stuff,
Yeah.
man. Always a pleasure. Check him out at NFL Network.
Thanks, Ray.
We'll
Great
be
to
back
see
with
you.
more Big Blue Kickoff Live after this.
3, 2, 1, look up.
You got to get padded up. Let's do it.
Wow, what a catch! Ridiculous!
All right. I'll show you my ref. This is my bedroom.
I'm leaving. Yeah, I'm freaked out a little bit. Good meeting you, Pete.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here. Where are you? What kind of piece of show is this? This wouldn't happen on Kimmel.
Here too, and I finally got an invitation, so thank you.
Well, you know we're here to race, though.
Yeah, but we're not gonna race this car.
Oh, no.
We're back here, another segment, our final segment. See, I'm shot, folks. We've had a long week, but it's been
the
really
final
good
episode.
content. It is the final segment of the final episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants, from the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Our NFL Combine coverage was presented by the Hospital for Special Surgery, the world's #1 in orthopedics. Choose better, move better, HSS, the official hospital of the New York Giants. Our final guest of the week is our buddy Ryan Fowler, who covers the draft for the Draft Network. Ryan, what's up, man?
Doing well, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, so let's talk about the workouts yesterday. What kind of stood out to you? What guys really you think either helped themselves, or maybe teams have to take a second look because they didn't perform as well as athletically as expected?
Yeah, I think it'd be easy to look at James Pierce Jr., right?
Yeah.
So he was the fastest guy there. I mean, you knew the athletic profile of the kid. I think it's
Right.
being able to marriage himself as a football player is really what teams are looking for as far as off the edge. But for me, this interior D-line class, beyond the Mason Grahams and the Kenneth Grants of the world, C.J. West is a guy I've really enjoyed, even back to his days at Kent State, that continues to check boxes for me personally. Aeneas Peebles as well, transferred to Virginia Tech from Duke. Ty Hamilton, Ty Robinson as well from Nebraska, I thought had a really nice day. David Walker from Central Arkansas, he's not going to impress anybody as far as a guy that first off the bus type of player.
Short, stocky edge rushers are not popular in the National Football
Correct.
League, but no one could block him at the Senior Bowl.
Absolutely. And really his entire career, right?
Yeah.
I know it's Central Arkansas, but for scouts' perspective, they want to see guys dominate those lower levels. And David Walker continues to check boxes for me as well.
All right, who disappointed you the most?
Yeah, when I look at the class, I think overall, Deion Walker, I don't know if I'm going to get there with Deion.
Now, he only did drills, right? He didn't test,
He
right?
did. It's just his body composition, the way in which he moves. I'm not there. I'm not going to say I wouldn't have Deion on my personal board if I was a GM. I'm not there with Deion Walker. I think there's a lot of other players in this class that I can get in this interior group to where I'm not going to prioritize a guy, Deion Walker. Again, if I'm a GM and I have a board, probably until post-top 100 for me.
Because his 2023 tape was so good, and
Yes.
then it just in 2024, there's just not a whole lot
There's
there.
no progression
No.
there for him.
He
And
got worse.
Even at the Senior Bowl, where all credit to Willie Lampkin from North Carolina, all credit to Willie. But look, when you have a chance to dominate somebody within the interior, really get after somebody and
Right.
really take their will, I have not seen that at all from Deion as far as taking a step.
And when you're 340 pounds and you have the athletic ability that he does,
Correct.
and you're in one-on-ones he went up against Sacramento State,
Yes.
Jacksonville State, a bunch of small school offensive linemen at the Senior Bowl. I mean, can you give me one rep when you're tossing somebody around like a rag doll?
Right.
You didn't get one of those reps at the Senior Bowl from him. It was very disappointing for me.
And it's set up for those guys, too, the defensive line, to win in those
Yes.
scenarios. And that's the most disappointing thing for me.
John and I have been talking about how the Giants may pick 2 defensive linemen because they are thin.
Yeah.
And it is the deepest position in this class.
The linemen aren't thin, though.
The linemen.
No, but the linemen aren't thin. The linemen are fit.
I got you.
Yeah, I got you. Sorry.
Play on words.
Yeah.
I can always count on him for that. My question to you, though, is that with all of these impressive tests that are going on this week for those guys, does that even push them up a little further? How deep can you go before the really good ones run out?
I think really, I think you can go into day 3, the 4th, 5th round for me. I think you're going to be able to find players. You know, at the top, I mentioned Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, but what is Darius Alexander? Is he as a guy that can play the 3? He can play 4-eye. Could he potentially slide into the 1? I mentioned Aeneas Peebles. I mentioned C.J. West, Joshua Farmer. There's a team in the AFC West that's won a bunch of Super Bowls, guys. They have a first-round grade on Joshua Farmer from Florida State. So that's the type of stuff you're getting with these players, to where the boards are going to be all over the place. Bottom line. So this class is all up in the air, and this defensive line group is loaded. Yeah. You need players that can push vertical. You need players that can stop the run. But this group, really into the 4th, 5th round, there's going to be names throughout the class that can make impacts quickly.
When does it start for you, that huge blob of guys, where you're going to have, in a 30 to 40 pick range, teams that have guys 20 picks away from each other, depending on the board? Is it like 15 to 40? Is it even 10 to 40? Where do you have that kind of group?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's going to be similar with where we see with the running backs. It's on day 2. I think it's at 30 to 50 bucket for me with the defensive line running backs. I mean, on day 2, the rounds 2 and 3, we may see 10 running backs, and we may see 10 defensive linemen take up 20 of the 32 picks on day 2. Or in the second round, potentially. It's going to be a bonanza on those positions on day 2.
We know the running backs is Genty and then everybody else,
Yeah.
right? A big drop to everybody else. But the cluster is really good.
It is.
Is there somebody here who you're really hoping is going to help himself during this week?
Yeah, I'll say this about the running back class. There are a lot of different body types in this class. You know, the Damian Martinez's of the world, the Ollie Gordons, the Cam Scadaboos. I think those players are going to move up teams' board because they're bigger, bulkier ball carriers. We see R.J. Harvey, Woody Marks, Brashard Smith, Jordan James, the lighter scat back type of players. Those bulkier guys, even a Caleb Johnson as well from Iowa, away from...
We just talked about him during the break.
Absolutely. Away from Genty, away from Marion Hampton.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys may be bumped up boards a little bit because they have that physical nature to be an RB1.
But you know what? Even some of the bulkier guys didn't look as bulky as I thought they would when I got to meet them.
Muscle weighs more than fat. they're big guys. Big physical dudes.
And it's funny, you mentioned Jordan James kind of in the scat back size group. He doesn't play that way, though.
No.
Jordan James plays, like if you just watched him, you'd think he's 220 pounds.
Correct.
He plays.
Correct. Then everybody wants to compare him to Bucky Irving. I think there are some similarities there, obviously wearing the same helmet. And I think both those guys can have similar impacts early on in their career because, as you mentioned, I don't see Jordan James just as a scat back.
No, he's not.
I can be a guy in early downs to create inside the tackles as well, similarly to how the Giants found Tyrone Tracy, a guy that was talked about a lot of third down back late in the process. He's obviously become much more than that.
What do you think of Devin Neal? He's one of those guys that I think is a little bit bigger. And this is not meant as an insult because I think he's a good player.
Yeah.
His tape's boring, right?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing that
that's
jumps
okay.
out that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But and I asked him, what do you think sets you aside in your skill set that makes you tick as a running back? And he said, my patience and my vision.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he's going to wow with the traits here, but I think there are teams going to really like his tape. I was talking to somebody today. They said he reminds me of a bigger version of Kyron Williams, where he's not going to get a lot of home runs, but it's going to be a lot of 5 yards here, 6 yards here, 4 yards here, and he's just going to grind you out.
Yeah, I think there has to be an appreciation for a guy like Devin Neal to where you're just a fundamentally good football player. Everybody wants big, fast, strong, physical that looks the part. But if you're just a really good football player, and even away from running backs, Xavier Restrepo from Miami, personally one of my favorite players in the class, Devin Neal, absolutely one of my favorites in the class. I think he's going to play 10-plus years in the league. Xavier Restrepo, 100%. A big favorite of his.
He was impressive at the podium, I'll tell you that. He's got a personality about him and a real fire.
And a lot of his attention, too, before we get back to Devin Neal, came along this year, of course, with Cam and that offense, but he was good in the years prior from Miami as well. And he leads as their all-time leader in receptions at a Miami program who we know has had some ball players there in years past. But no, Devin Neal, you look at that Colorado tape. This is a guy that really kept Colorado out of the Big 12 title game later on in the year. And that's a guy that can create on early downs, inside the tackles. He's physical, not afraid to also stick his face in pass pro as well. And even listening to Marion Hampton today to where he was talking about, look, if you don't stick your face in pass pro, you're not going to succeed at the NFL level. And that's something that really sets a guy like Devin Neal apart from me.
Well, Hampton's big enough to take on a linebacker one-on-one, though. He's
He
got
is.
that physicality.
And even pass pro as well. A lot of guys talk about technique. Pass pro is an effort thing. Will
No
you
question.
do it or will you won't?
Yeah. Hey, I want to ask you the next couple of days, what are you looking at? Are there 1, 2, 3 guys that, like, I can't wait to see? John and I are out of here this afternoon. We're not going to be able to stay. We're going to watch it on TV.
Yeah.
Who are you looking forward to seeing?
Tomorrow, Arian Smith, the wide receiver from Georgia. Now, I know that may be an easy pick. This guy is expected to run the fastest 40 here in Indy.
What was he, like a 10-10, 100-meter guy or something like that?
He won the 2019 Prefontaine Classic in the elite 100-meter race. He's the 200-meter title winner in Florida. World-class type of speed. Now, I remember Andre Yoshivas from Princeton. He was that world-class type of athlete.
Hurdler, right? If I remember correctly?
Yes.
And actually did pretty well for the Bengals this year.
Absolutely. Yeah. But Arian Smith, I think, is someone, if he can learn to catch the football. You know, there were times at the Senior Bowl where I'm standing on the sideline, he dropped 2 straight tunnel screens against air. That can't happen at the NFL level. But if he can find a way.
He runs by people, though.
Yes. To find a little bit of that, just a little bit of median in his game to catch the football. He is going to be someone I think could go much higher in this class as he's going to roll. I expect him to be low 4.3s, 4.28, 4.29 tomorrow afternoon. So that's one guy if I could pick out of the next few days. Arian Smith, wide receiver from Georgia.
Here's a different type of question. We saw a guy like Puka Nacua, who does not test great. He played only 1 game at the Senior Bowl that year, was great. Then surprisingly, he got hurt. And just like he was his entire college career, he drops in the draft. Who's the wide receiver in this class that's not going to test well, but you're going to be like, I don't care. He's a good player. I want him on my team.
100% Jack Besh, wide receiver from TCU. He was on a roster with Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, Keyshawn Butte, and Trey Palmer before he transferred to Nebraska. He led that team in receptions his freshman year. Before he transferred to TCU, of course. He's a flat-out pit bull at the wide receiver position that is not going to test well. He does everything, however, well as far as being a fundamentally elite football player. He will block on the outside. Doesn't matter if you're doing that. No block, no rock. That type of attitude that even Pat Bryant talked about today. He can separate all 3 levels. He can win 50-50 balls. He doesn't live in that contested area, which I do like about Jack Besh. But there's one guy that is not going to impress a lot in testing. That's Jack Besh, 100% from TCU.
And he also didn't separate great at the Senior Bowl. He caught everything.
Yes.
But he didn't separate. But I think that speaks to the...
Yes,
correct. And his story is terrific.
Outstanding.
You know,
Tough kid.
I'm going to ask you about your favorite player who did not get invited to the Combine, because there's over 320 of them here, and I know you probably have a few that you wish were here.
Yeah, there's 2 guys. One absolutely stands out. R.J. Oben, the edge defender from Notre Dame.
Son of Roman Oben, who played for us.
Correct. There is no reason, and I hope the NFL guys hear this, that R.J. Oben should not be here.
And his dad works for the league, too.
Correct. VP of Player Development, Roman Oben.
Indeed.
Yes. He, R.J., I really enjoyed the tape. You know, former Duke transfer, extremely smart kid. I believe he was double majoring at Duke at one time. Maybe incorrect on that, but I remember seeing something. R.J. is a guy, early downs, he sets the edge as good as edge in this class. Seeing him at the Senior Bowl dominate in an environment that's a neutral setting, with GMs and scouts looking at him, that's a guy that showed up in the biggest moments for Notre Dame.
He surged during the second half of the season.
He did. And you know what you're going to get as well from a Marcus Freeman coached player, as far as not only the character and the person, but the
we
football
know his
player.
Pop real well.
Yes.
Trust me.
Absolutely.
He's going to make sure he's got all his ducks in order.
Yes. R.J. Oben and then Dan Jackson as well from Georgia, the safety.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, Dan Jackson had some moments at the Senior Bowl down there. Yeah, he had some good plays. All right, final question. Either a player or a piece of news or a tidbit, anything that you think should be top of mind that you've noticed over the past couple of days that you want to make sure people know as we head into day 2 of workouts?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. I can't say everything, but definitely some tidbits for those out there. I would say Tator McMillan. I wouldn't be surprised if he's on the board when we get to the low 20s.
Wow, really?
I would not be surprised. Now, I will say
You're
this.
the first person to say that.
I would not be shocked. This wide receiver class is still up in the air. I don't know if it's Luther, how teams judge Travis Hunter, but Tator McMillan, I wouldn't be surprised if he's available in the low 20s.
People worry about his speed? Is that what their concerns are?
The speed. Now, if he comes out, is he? I'm
he's
not
not
sure.
Running
he's
today.
not running.
No, he's not running today.
If he runs at his pro day and he cracks high 4.3s, low 4.4s, I know he's been talking 4.4s. He's been training at Exos, and they've been cracking 4.3, 4.39. That's different at Exos, but we'll
honestly,
see.
Even if he gets the 4.45, that's more than good enough. That's fine.
But if he's low 4.6s,
that's a problem. If he's 4.6, that's a problem.
So that on Tatora, and then I'll say 2 names. They're just wherever you have them, move them up. Mason Taylor, the tight end from LSU, and
people love him.
Really love him.
I don't see it, but I know everyone I talk to loves him.
And Carson Schlesinger, the linebacker from UCLA.
Okay.
He's got great hair.
Amazing
Excellent
hair.
hair.
Outstanding hair. So those two guys, absolutely, that are bumping up boards for sure.
Ryan, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have some breaking news from the NFL that we'll get to in a second. Ryan, good stuff, man. Appreciate it.
Great to see you
Check out all
again.
those good
Thank
stuff
you.
on the
You as
Draft
well.
Network.
Thanks, guys.
We'll be back with one last segment of Big Blue Kickoff Live right after this.
All right, Sean, we got 335 max base. We got X post, okay? Here's the post signal. I gave you the post signal. Give me a good fake right behind me.
Richie, I got you.
All right, wide 18. Right, this side. Oh, right there. Oh, he looks.
He's open. Go get it. Go get it. Brado! Let's go!
There's the post route.
Let's go! That was awesome. Great route. Money. That was money. I think it just scattered.
Yes.
Oh, that was awesome.
Oh, let's go.
Woo! You want to go
I
for
didn't
it?
cross the line, O'Hara. I didn't cross the line.
Nice.
Hi, we're back here on Big Blue Kickoff Live to wrap up our coverage of the NFL Combine here in Indianapolis. And if you've been paying attention to our shows and our Giants Huddle podcast, we have been tracking the Matthew Stafford situation.
Yes.
It was widely reported that Matthew Stafford was seeking a contract extension, and the Rams, you listened to Jordan Rodrigue on the Giants Huddle podcast that went up yesterday. You guys should go check that out with all the other teams. It's still relevant because, well, there's other stuff in the draft about in there, too, about the Giants quarterback situation. And it appeared the Rams were not willing to meet Matthew Stafford's price point, which was going to be, at minimum $50 million a year. I was told this morning it was $55 guaranteed over the first 2 years, whatever that ended up being. Well, according to Adam Schefter, and the Rams have now tweeted this out too, so this is not just a report. The Rams tweeted out a welcome back Matthew Stafford tweet, so this is pretty official. And I'm going to read the tweet verbatim here from Adam Schefter of ESPN. LA's quarterback is back. The Rams and Matthew Stafford reached agreement today on a restructured deal that keeps him in Los Angeles and quashes any and all trade speculation per sources. The first significant offseason quarterback domino has fallen. We spoke about this, Paul. It always made the most sense from a football perspective for him to remain in L.A. It was just a matter of them
For both parties.
For both parties. And it was just a matter of them figuring out the dollar and cents, and it appears they have done that.
Well, of course, any team that was interested in making a deal for him has to be disappointed. We talked to Greg Cosell earlier this week here at the Combine, and he flat out said he was the best quarterback in the NFC during the 2024 season and nearly had the Rams going back to the Super Bowl. So
it wasn't for two Saquon Barkley runs in that Eagles game. The Rams beat the Eagles.
I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This guy is still at a high caliber level. In fact, I believe Jordan had actually said, 80 or 90% of what he was. He's terrific. He is still a star player. So a lot of people were questioning, why would the Rams not be able to come to terms with him? Because they're still a good team, and he's still very good. Well, apparently they finally figured that out.
Yeah, so now the Giants are, I shouldn't say back to the drawing board. Nothing was done here, but they continue their work in terms of how they want to acquire a quarterback. Again, we heard from Joe Shane earlier this week, Paul, and he spoke a lot about taking swings.
And winning games this year.
Correct. So I think you first look at the veteran quarterback market, because there are two ways to look at this. And, folks, we're over, so we don't want to go too long here. We evolve next week to talk about this with free agency coming. But free agency comes before the draft, right? So right now you're picking third. You don't know what quarterback's going to be there. So you have two choices, basically. If you want to assure yourself the player you want, go sign that player in free agency, just go over the top, paying the most money, whatever veteran that might be.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can guarantee what player you get in the NFL draft.
If you decide to make a phone call to the Tennessee Titans is what you're talking about.
That is how you do it. So I would imagine those are the two avenues right now. Look, can you stay at 3 and still pick a quarterback? Sure. But if that's the case, you better be absolutely positive the guy that you sign in free agency or trade for is going to be a guy you feel comfortable starting the whole year and can win games for you.
Well, folks, to give you a little bit of context out here at the Combine, and you guys know it's kind of been talked about even elsewhere, there seems to be a very, 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 very strong feeling that the Browns at number 2 are taking a quarterback. Okay? So you kind of have to pencil that one in and say, well, which one are they going to take? Who knows?
And I was talking to another Titans reporter today. And by the way, we had Jim Wyatt, who was our Titans reporter. We had Aaron Goldhammer, the guy covers the Browns, on that Giants Huddle podcast that went up on Thursday.
So get their perspective on it.
And again, that's audio only, so you can only find it on podcast platforms. But
right.
The Titans reporter again told me today, he goes, He says, I feel like the coaches might want a quarterback, but it's first year for the GM.
Franchise going to trade, right?
He says they want to pick up more picks. They
Yeah.
want more picks. So
And
I
Chris
would not be
Trapasso-
surprised if they're very open to moving down from one.
Chris Trapasso of CBS Sports, who was on Monday before I landed here.
Tuesday.
Was
Yes,
it Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday before I landed. He came on earlier. And just the other night, he had a proposed trade with the Raiders trading with the Titans to move up from 6 to 1.
That wouldn't surprise
So
me.
that
The
they
Raiders
could
were
get
in
a
the
quarterback.
The Raiders were reportedly in the market for Stafford, too.
That's
so
why I'm bringing this up.
And now,
so that they may be looking for a QB, and they might be a trading partner, and the Browns may be looking for your QB. So all of a sudden, you could be QB1 and QB2.
Yeah, and the problem you run into is if there's competition, then the price gets driven up.
Of course.
Now, I've talked to a bunch of people here this week, and no one seems to indicate to me, I haven't found one person that has said to me, this is going to cost your 2026 first-round pick. I haven't gotten that from anybody, to be totally honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spoken about this. That's my red line. I'm not going there. But I
don't
think
blame
you're
you.
looking at multiple, well, I'll put it, it's going to be multiple day 2 picks. What that looks like when all is said and done, I don't know. But from talking to people here, that's the price that's been bandied about, is multiple day 2 picks to move from 3 to 1. But again, the question is, do the Raiders offer next year's 1? Right? Does that make it worth it for the Titans? Like, I don't know the answer to that question. Do the Browns say, look, we want to make sure we get our guy? Do they offer him, like, just a 2, and then the Titans get whatever player they want that's not a quarterback? So there's a lot that goes into this. But I think the Giants are in a good spot because if the Titans go to 3, they'll still get Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, one of the 2 premium players in the class. So I think the Giants are in a good place if they want to go down this road in terms of trading up.
Well, I think there are 2 other factors here that could make that also a little bit hazy. And one is, we don't know exactly where the Browns are going here because they got Myles Garrett saying pretty much he wants out. So they've got to figure out if they're going to trade him or make him stay put. And that could also alter what they're going to do with their pick.
If they get extra picks, it's easier for them to move up if they have to.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
So that's a factor that we have no control over. And I'll give you one more.
To quote Paul, there's a lot of layers to the onion.
There are. I like that, John. Sweet. The other problem here that none of us have any real handle on is Abdul Carter having this foot injury, which may or may not slip him a couple spots.
Yeah, the sense I don't. My sense is that it's not, but we'll see.
It may not. But does Abdul Carter's foot injury almost assure that quarterbacks go 1 and 2, because the 1 and 2 picks? Either teams trade up to go get a quarterback, or maybe the Titans were thinking about Abdul Carter, and now they're like, he's got a foot injury, we'll trade down. Who knows?
Lots to unravel, folks.
There's a lot here. There's a lot going on.
And only a week until free agency. When we get back, the negotiating period begins a week from Monday. So it comes fast and furious, folks, and we'll have a lot to talk about.
We're going to be busy.
Tune in on exactly what's going on, and we'll continue our draft coverage as well on the Giants Huddle Podcast and Big Blue Kickoff Live, which will be live every day, 12:30 from now until the NFL Draft. All right. Great job. Thanks for being with us, everybody. Want to thank a lot of people that helped us get on the air this week. Paul Dottino, obviously, Madeline Burke did a great job co-hosting with me. Michael Becton, Pearson Butler out here, Christine Beluya out here, Matthew Swenson out here. Want to thank the guys back in East Rutherford that have done a great job making sure this gets streamed and all the graphics and highlights and all that stuff that you've gotten up there. Charles Erdman, Dominic Mazzola, doing a good job posting the stuff up on the web too, along with Pearson. So great job by everybody. Thank you so much for being with us this week. Hope you guys got as much out of this as we did, and we'll see you on Monday. We're coming back to Jersey. Big Blue Kickoff Live, 12:30. See you then.
3, 2, 1, look up.
You got to get padded up.
Let's do it.
Wow, what a catch! Ridiculous!
All right, all right, all right.
All right, all right, all right.
I'll show you my arm. This is my bedroom.
I'm leaving. Yeah, I'm freaked out a little bit. Good meeting you, Pete.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here. Where are you? What kind of piece of show is this? This wouldn't happen on Kimmel.
Year 2, and I finally got an invitation, so thank you.
Well, you know we're here to race, though.
Yeah, but we're not going to race this car.
Oh, no.